Probably the most controversial product release in the last few years was actually AMD's Zen 5 series, which is certainly not what I was expecting to be the case, but it turned into an absolute cluster. Released in late 2024, we were all excited for AMD's latest offering, the next step on AM5, and everything coming out of the company leading up to the release sounded really great. Double-digit performance gains for games thanks to a 16% IPC increase over Zen 4. Sadly, however, this isn't what we got. But before we get into that, today's sponsor spot is brought to you by Ugreen and their MagFlow 2-in-1 wireless charger, featuring new and improved Qi 2 wireless charging. For a world first, Ugreen are boasting wireless charging performance with 25 watt of efficient uninterrupted power delivery, and that's a significant improvement over the previous 15 watts. The MagFlow integrates Apple's MagSafe magnetic alignment concept to improve charging efficiency and safety, while still maintaining compatibility with Android and other wireless charging capable devices. It also supports USB-C charging at 5 watts, which can be used in conjunction with the 2 wireless pads for a total of 35 watts of charging power. Ugreen has also released a 10,000 mAh power bank, which works the same way, but rather than a vertical phone charger, it supports an integrated USB-C cable. These units are compact, making them the perfect travel companion, or great options for a minimalistic desktop. If you'd like to learn more about the Ugreen MagFlow lineup, please check the link in the video description. Okay, so late last year, we were pretty well primed for some good gaming gains on AM5, but unfortunately Zen 5 arrived and we were left very stumped. A lot of confusion around the results. The 9700X, for example, it was just 1 to 2% faster than the 7700X, while the 9600X was pretty much the same story, just a few percent faster than the 7600X. Now, look, the margins did vary between review outlets, as they often do, and this is because of different test methods used and stuff like that. So, there was some variance there, but really there was a common reoccurring theme, especially for gaming, and that was that Zen 5 offered very little to nothing over Zen 4. AMD themselves didn't seem to be able to work out how much faster Zen 5 should be than Zen 4, and this led to mass confusion. There were even examples where Zen 5 processors were slower for gaming than Zen 4, and while some said this is a mistake and can't be possible, AMD's own review guide showed that it was in fact possible. So that is to say, AMD's own internal testing found examples where the 9700X was slower than the 7700X for gaming. In the end, the wild goose chase for the alleged missing Zen 5 performance went all over the place, but this did lead to a few very important discoveries. Firstly, AMD claimed when running Windows 11 in a special administrator mode that this fixed Zen 5. They said this was a Windows 11 bug that could be addressed and would fix Zen 5. Having looked into this particular issue, I found that Zen 5 was indeed faster using the administrator mode, but so was Zen 4, and therefore this was not a Zen 5 specific fix. However, there were examples where Ryzen processors saw a bigger performance uplift relative to competing Intel processors in this mode, so something pretty odd was going on. And it's also worth noting that this administrator mode sidestepped a number of security features, so it was possible the Intel processors just dealt with those tasks better. AMD then pivoted again, now claiming that there's a bug with the then current Windows 11 23H2 build, which they said hurt Zen 5 performance. At the time, there was the upcoming 24H2 build, which featured an updated branch prediction optimization, which was alleged to unlock Zen 5's true performance. So once we got 24H2, we did some testing, and we found that while there were a number of instances where the 9700X was dramatically improved over what we saw with 23H2, the same improvements also applied to Zen 4 processors. But crucially, there were real performance gains to be had, and across a wide range of games I found that on average, the 9700X was now 10% faster, as was the 7700X. But this is crucial information because Intel CPUs saw no real gains with 24H2. There were some examples, but overall just a few percent was gained. And these kinds of gains from a Windows update pretty well unheard of at the time, so there was a lot of confusion, even amongst tech media outlets, as they scrambled to update their testing. For example, Hardware Canucks, they were one of the first to attempt to verify my findings, but at the time they concluded the gains were due to testing with VBS enabled versus disabled, which was a really odd conclusion given that it was very well established way back when Windows 11 was first released, that the core and memory isolation security settings in Windows 11 could hurt performance, and therefore we disabled them for testing. And therefore at the time I could have confirmed that we always test with VBS disabled and had done so since the very introduction of Windows 11. But the point is, it was very well known at the time that you should never mix VBS enabled and disabled results. You either test with it enabled or with it disabled, but not one and the other. Anyway, Hardware Canucks' video titled Unrealistic Expectations, Windows Updates on Ryzen 9000 was released on August 30th, concluding that there weren't any real performance gains to be had with 24H2. Oddly though, just 2 months later they posted on X, right before Intel's Arrow Lake release, stating that after retesting CPUs with the 24H2 release, the scheduler updates really did help AMD CPUs, claiming up to a 15% performance boost across their entire gaming suite. So that would mean the 10% average uplift that I showed months prior is something that they now agree to be accurate, and it wasn't simply a goof with the VBS settings. They never really addressed that in their video or pinned a comment, so I'm not sure what their stance is on that one. Anyway, not to worry, we did get there in the end, and Hardware Canucks is now seeing accurate data, which aligns with our own review data. For example, if we look at the original Ryzen 7 9700X review, which was recorded using Windows 11 23H2, the Core i9-14900K was 10% faster than the 9700X and just 6% slower than the 7800X3D. Then fast forward to the Core Ultra 7 265K review, and now the 14900K is just 0.5% faster than the 9700X, and now 14% slower than the 7800X3D. So the 24H2 update went a long way in strengthening Ryzen's position against the competing Intel parts. But what it absolutely didn't do was help Zen 5 relative to Zen 4. So, has anything changed here? I keep seeing comments from people claiming we need to look at this again. Zen 5 has seen further optimizations, and as a result is now comfortably ahead of Zen 4 for gaming. So that's interesting, and therefore today we're taking a look at the 7600X and 9600X and comparing them in a dozen games. I've also included the 9800X3D for reference, just so we know if we're CPU or GPU bound in the testing. And I'm of course using the most up-to-date version of Windows 11, along with the latest BIOS revisions for the AM5 motherboard that I'll be testing with, so let's get into it. First up, we have Marvel Rivals, tested using both the medium and ultra presets, and we see when using the medium settings that the 9600X is 5% faster on average, and then just 3% faster with ultra. The data was recorded using the built-in benchmark, so anyone can verify these results, providing they have the same hardware. Anyway, 3 to 5% is what we've come to typically expect when comparing Zen 4 and Zen 5 processors. Now this data really shocked me. Previously, Rainbow Six Siege was one of the more favourable titles for Zen 5 and its battle with the previous generation Zen 4 parts, seeing up to a 16% performance increase when looking at the 1% lows, though just a 6% increase for the average frame rate. This time, we found that the 9600X is 17% faster for the average frame rate and 19% faster for the 1% lows when using the medium preset. Switching to the Ultra Plus preset reduced those margins to 11% for the average frame rate and 13% for the 1% lows, but still these are some impressive gains for the Zen 5 processor, and it will be interesting to see if we can find any other examples like this. The Assassin's Creed Shadows data is more GPU limited, even with the medium preset, but it's not entirely GPU limited as the 9800X3D was still 10% faster. So there should be some headroom there for the CPU. But in this example, we see no performance difference between the 7600X and 9600X. Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered certainly isn't GPU limited. Here the 9800X3D was 44% faster than the 9600X when using the medium preset, and then a massive 53% faster with very high. And again, we see an example where the higher preset proves to be more CPU demanding. However, despite the 9800X3D being significantly faster, the 9600X is barely any faster than the 7600X. At most, we're looking at just shy of a 2% performance uplift, which is very much in line with most of our data when first comparing these CPUs late last year. Testing with the most up-to-date version of Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, we found that the 7600X was a few percent faster than the 9600X, which is a bit odd, but as I noted earlier, not entirely unexpected, and AMD themselves have shown examples in games where this can happen. Previously, I found both CPUs to deliver very similar performance in this title, but with this up-to-date testing, the Zen 4 part was a little bit faster. Space Marine 2 is an example of an extremely CPU demanding game, and yet the 9600X wasn't much faster than the 7600X. In fact, when using the Ultra preset, performance was near enough to be identical, though we did see a 6% improvement for the Zen 5 part when running the Medium preset, so that's something. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered is another CPU-heavy single-player game, but again we see very little difference between these two CPUs. In fact, when using the Medium preset we saw no difference, while the 9600X was a mere 2% faster with the very high-quality settings. Mafia the Old Country is a new addition to our testing, and here the 9600X and 7600X are again neck and neck, with the newer Zen 5 processor just shy of 2% faster at best. And again, we're not GPU limited in any of this testing. Now, ACC was one of the few games that we found previously did favour the Zen 5 architecture, and that's still the case today. In this example, the 9600X was 8% faster than the 7600X with the medium preset, and then 12% faster when using Epic, again suggesting that the higher quality preset is a bit more CPU demanding. The 9600X was 11% faster than the 7600X in Baldur's Gate 3 when using the medium settings, so a good performance uplift there. That margin is however reduced to just 5% when using the Ultra settings, and we're by no means GPU limited here, as the 9800X 3D was still 82% faster, which is absolutely insane. Now, I know some reviewers use the FPS Heaven Workshop benchmark to test Counter-Strike 2 performance, but I'll be honest, it's not very good, so I don't use it. That said, some of you have asked me to test with it, so I've included the data here just as an example, but I won't use it in our 12-game average, as I've also tested the game in a way that I believe is more accurate, so we'll include that data instead. The frame rates in this Workshop benchmark are much higher than what we see in-game, which I feel makes this more of a synthetic test. And we see when using the medium preset that the 9600X is 25% faster than the 7600X, which is impressive, but these results also aren't representative of actual gameplay, so let's move on to see what performance looks like when playing the game. Using a Pro Replay, we find the actual performance you'll see in-game when using these hardware configurations. With the medium preset, the 9600X is still a good bit faster than the 7600X, at least when looking at the average frame rate, where we see a 16% uplift, though just a 5% boost to the 1% lows. Using the very high preset, the average frame rate was 8% higher using the 9600X, but this time we see virtually identical 1% low performance. Now please note I'm not including the Counter-Strike 2 FPS Heaven Workshop benchmark in this dataset. So across the 12 games that I am including, the 9600X was on average 6% faster when using the medium settings, and just 3.5% faster with the high/ultra settings. So this is pretty well in line with what we found when we first reviewed the Zen 5 processors. Now, a new set of benchmarks I'll be adding to all of our CPU gaming tests is shader compilation time. And for this, I've got 3 games, starting with Marvel Rivals. In this test, the 9600X is less than 1% faster than the 7600X, both taking just over 5 minutes to complete the test, whereas the 9800X 3D took 3.5 minutes, making it 34% faster. Which makes sense, it does have 33% more cores, and this is a core-heavy workload that 100% utilizes all the cores. And we're looking at a similar situation in The Last of Us Part 1. Here the 9600X was a mere 3% faster than the 7600X, taking an insane 16 minutes to complete the task. The 9800X 3D was 35% faster, which meant it still took over 10 minutes to compile the shaders. Finally, we have S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, and here the 9600X was just 1% faster than the 7600X, making the 9800X 3D nearly 30% faster in this example. So when it comes to shader compilation performance, the 9600X is really no better than the 7600X. So there you have it. In terms of gaming performance, Zen 5 still offers very little over Zen 4, and this is especially true for the non-X3D Vcache models. Now, I called Zen 5 a flop in my day one review, and to this day, I completely stand by that. For those already on AM5, it was an extremely disappointing release, and those who were yet to transition to AM5 didn't really add any incentive to do so, and that's probably why a lot of you have been holding out on AM4. Of course, performance is just one piece of the puzzle. pricing is equally important, and upon release, the 9700X was priced at $360 US, and the 9600X at $280 US. Meanwhile, comparable Zen 4 models like the 7700, that cost just $290 US, and it came with a cooler, while the Ryzen 5 7600 was $180 US, and again, it too came with a box cooler, something neither the 9600X nor the 9700X offered. So, given the meager performance gains, paying a nearly 24% premium for the 9700X made no sense, while an almost 60% premium for the 9600X was just pure madness. Since then, pricing has thankfully dropped for the Zen 5 parts, though we have seen Zen 4 go up a little bit as supply starts to run out. The 9700X can now be had for $300 US, and you can expect to pay the same for a 7700X or $285 for a 7700. So at that point, you might as well just buy the Zen 5 part, and I did say in my day one review that this would be the case. So once Zen 5 pricing filtered down to Zen 4, then at that point you would buy a Zen 5. So we're finally seeing that today. And in fact, this is actually exactly what I said in my review. And making matters worse is that price premium. If the 9700X was slotting in at the same $290 US asking price as the 7700X, yeah, I guess sure, that's fine. It's a small upgrade, nothing to get excited about. It certainly wouldn't be bad, or it'd be a lot less bad, but at a 24% premium, AMD can just keep this thing. I have no interest in the 9700X at this point in time. Of course, as expected, pricing did settle down, and in fact, the Zen 5 sales were so bad that AMD was forced to start cutting prices just 2 months after release, and by December, it was possible to purchase a 9700X for $320 US, though even then it still made more sense to pick up the 7700X, which had dropped down to $260 US at the same time. The 9600X can be had for the same $185 US as the 7600, so the non-X version. So that being the case, you might as well buy the Zen 5 part. So we are finally now at a point in time where buying Zen 5 makes sense, but it's still far from an exciting upgrade. As we just saw for gaming, you're looking at around a 3 to 6% performance improvement on average. So despite what seemed like endless drama for a period there, a year on, a little over a year on now, very little has changed, or really nothing has changed, at least when comparing Zen 5 to Zen 4. And that is going to do it for this video. If you liked it, you know what to do. Subscribe for more content. We have some more CPUs to add to this data set. 7500F, 7400F, 8400F are coming next, and I'm also going to look at start adding the Core i5. So I'll probably start with the really good popular value option like the Core i5 12400F and see how that compares to a similarly priced part like the 8400F. Anyway, that's all to come in the not too distant future, so make sure you are subscribed for that because you won't want to miss it. Also, we have the join button or Patreon if you want to become a Harbour Unboxed member, get access to our exclusive Discord server, monthly live streams, Q&A stuff, and behind the scenes content. So check that out if you're interested. If not, perfectly fine, and I would like to thank you for watching this video. I'm your host, Steve. See you again next time.